recording.
Namaskaram. A very warm welcome. CHIDAAKAASHAM is a two-day international webinar organized by Trikalaa Gurukulam Delhi and Aatmalaya Academy Bengaluru. This webinar features eminent artists, scholars, and academicians from Indian institutions and universities abroad who would be enlightening us with their talks and performances on a wide range of topics that will focus on rare metric pattern, rhythmic combinations in various genres of music and dance, both classical and folk, pan-Indian, Western music, Indian philosophy, and rituals. This two-day webinar is organized jointly by Trikalaa Gurukulam Delhi and Aatmalaya Academy Bengaluru. Trikalaa Gurukulam Delhi, established by Padma Shri Dr. Leela Omcheri, is a center of training and research in Indian music, dance, and Sopana Sangeetam of Kerala. A non-profit organization, the center has been imparting training in Carnatic classical music, Mohiniyattam, and Sopana Sangeetam for more than 3 decades under the able guidance of gurus like Dr. Deepthi Omcheri Bhalla. With over 3 decades of professional experience in the field, Dr. Padmaja Suresh heads the Aatmalaya Academy of Art and Culture, Bengaluru, founded by Chakyar Rajan. Aatmalaya offers Bharatanatyam and music classes and has put in consistent efforts since 2004 with the path-breaking scheme Kala Chaitanya for lesser privileged children, and it holds regular festivals which aids the rural artists. Aatmalaya is known for its spiritual and philosophical teachings of Indian arts and culture through regular classes, important seminars, demonstration, and frequent artistic productions. Now, I would request Professor Dr. Deepthi Omcheri Bhalla to speak few words as we begin this seminar.
Namaste to all of you. Am I audible? Ishwaram Mayinam Vidyan Mayateetam Niranjanam Sadanande Chidakashe Maya Meghastatim Manaha. Ishvara is Maya Adhipati. In the Ananda Swarupa Chaitanya Kasha, Maya is like the dark clouds, and mind, the sudden illuminating lightning. Let us all come together and experience the Sat Chit Ananda, the essence of all performative traditions of India, with illuminating talks and presentations by scholars, artists, and my fellow academicians from around the globe. I'm sure the two-day event will be memorable in the exchange of thoughts and knowledge for all of us. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd also like to request Dr. Padmaja Suresh to welcome everybody on this occasion.
Satgurave Namaha. Heartfelt pranams to the esteemed audience here, to all our distinguished scholars, performers, presenters. When Trikalaa and Aatmalaya get together, the stars have to descend. So let us all reverberate CHIDAAKAASHAM. A warm welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We begin today's program with an inaugural address by Padma Vibhushan Dr. Sonal Mansingh, Rajya Sabha member. Dr. Sonal Mansingh was nominated to the upper house Rajya Sabha by the President of India in 2018 in recognition of her lifelong services to India's arts. She is the recipient of Padma Vibhushan. Her unique contribution has been her lifelong work using her knowledge to address socio-cultural issues through dance as a soloist, teacher, choreographer, and motivational speaker. As the founder president of Sri Kamakhya Kalapeeth, she has trained talented students who are carrying the message of Indian arts globally. She teaches the art holistically and combining music, yoga, Sanskrit, and cultural traditions of India. We have a video message from Dr. Sonal Mansingh, which would be played on screen. Over to the screen.
Pranamamyaham, Namaskaram. Great opportunity for me to be connected with this wonderful festival. Life is a festival even if there is pandemic. We have to remember that the rhythm of life is not always in Chaturasra. So this is my pleasure and privilege to inaugurate CHIDAAKAASHAM, festival of Tala, Laya, rhythm. I would like to share a few thoughts with you as Deepti asked me to. And I really respect and admire Deepti's parents, her mother Leelaji, great work in music, and Deepti herself. So here is what I thought I will share. The name Chidakash, Chit, Akash. The two words conjoin. Chidakash, Chit, Chit. I thought there are so many hundreds and thousands of definitions. I would say that it is the deepest point of consciousness. Deepest point. Akasha is, of course, space, ever expanding, ever present. Ever present. And in the confines of our body, mind, in the confines of our body and mind, in the space where the 14 Brahmandas are in constant motion, where the cosmic play is happening, that which is within us, as the Lotus Sutra says, Om Mani Padme Hum. That jewel-like Chit is in the deepest recesses within our heart. Heart which is ever open like a lotus to receive Prakash. Chidananda, Satchidananda. There are eternal rhythms of 84 lakh bhava. What they say, 84 lakh yonis. I call them 84 lakh bhava. And therefore we say bhavo bhava, janma janmantara. So there is the eternal rhythm in bhavo bhava, and we, all of us, in different cycles of birth and life, play different rhythms according to our form and being. That rhythm manifests in our life breath, even if it's an ant or a plant or a human or a bird. That rhythm manifests in our life breath, prana, in our inhalation and exhalation, which is ideally in Chaturasra Gati. But then there is Chaturasra, Tishra, Mishra, Khanda, Sankirna. All the musicians would know that the basic units of matras or beats in one particular unit. The basic unit is always 4. The even rhythm, the balanced rhythm. And unless the rhythm of our breath is balanced, we feel unwell or we are not with ourselves. As in Tishram, the unit of 3, Mishram, unit of 7, Khandam, unit of 5, Sankirna, unit of 9. And it is such a lovely play of all these various units as reaction to situations, consciously or unconsciously. One is Tishragati, the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Either we are running, we are in a hurry, the breath goes in excitement. Mishram 7, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And there are variations as it where you put the emphasis. But it has a kind of a comforting speed. And there's Khandam, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And sometimes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Now that also is uneven. And Sankirna, the 9, unit of 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And it is a little lengthier, a little longer, as if you want to say something important. Whichever way we may look at these basic units, they are the ones that create the rhythmic cycles. And I have said that in nature, Prakriti, I think you should have started that. It's cold here. In nature, Prakriti, there too the rhythmical cycles play out. In our understanding, we call them Kala Chakra, the cosmic cycle. And it's reflected in the Ritu Chakra, the cycle of seasons. And then, for us, musicians, dancers, Tala Chakra, the constant cycles of varying rhythms in varying speeds, Gati, Laya Vinyasa, especially in Bharatavarsha, in India. I think the mind just revels, enjoys the subtleties of breaking up these matras, breaking up these cycles into subtle and more subtle, even a little breath. And that much has to be left to be able to come on the main beat. Where, how many times? It is absolute mathematics. But this mathematics is the one which creates beauty. It is not just a mental exercise. It is not just to prove something. It is anandam, bliss. It's delightful. And therefore the Tala Chakra, which reflects the Kala Chakra, the Ritu Chakra, and I would say our Sharirik Chakra, our Mano Chakra, our Bhava Chakra, Kalpana Chakra, Manodharma Chakra. So all these cyclical things which occur again and again in different situations, they are the I would say, they are born out of the basic principle of nada. Nada. The subtlest vibrations in space. In space. These vibrations pulsate everywhere, in the planetary systems, in our own body, in our breath, in the cyclical flow of the blood, in the cyclical birth and death rhythm. Everything is cyclical, everything pulsates with nada, with these absolutely subtle vibrations. And these we call anahata, anahata nada. That which is unheard, we cannot hear it with our physical ears, the human ears. We are very gross. Our indriyas, our sense organs are not honed, not attuned enough. And that is actually, to me, this entire exercise of understanding, of trying to conceive, to comprehend. What is this? What is? And for that, I thought I will share with you that sometimes these vibrations, anahata nada, is heard in deep meditation or in dance, in music, in totally focused moment, as if perhaps in the deepest ocean, maybe. I would have added to the already dense timetable by asking to include the special Tala system and the names of Talas in the Oriya system of music. I don't think it is well known yet, unfortunately, but that is the third system of music in India: Hindustani, Carnatic, and Oriya. Sometimes later perhaps we'll catch up on that. And now I would like to end with this most wonderful idea that Bharatavarsha has this unique concept of our divinities holding and playing on music instruments. Not the host of the demigods, of which Indra is the chief, but our super gods. And they're super musicians and dancers. For example, Devi Saraswati holds and plays on the veena. And Vishnu Narayana plays on the mridangam and blows the Panchajanya Shankha. And Shiva, of course, plays the damaru. And Brahma plays on the cymbals. Krishna plays on the flute. And Lakshmi gives the tala with the tali. Tala. And this is how we have conceived of the great systems of music, melody and rhythm. Rhythm and melody, they go together. Even in pure, pure rhythm, pure percussion, there is the music. And that is why you have to tune the instruments, whether it is mridangam, whether it is pakshavadya, pakvaj, whether it is tabla, whatever. And therefore, I bow to this great spirit of Bharatavarsha, which has given us the system of hearing the anahata and translating it into our own understanding, through our own understanding, into plausible, tangible world. May your wonderful webinar, seminar, festival achieve a great purpose of putting rhythm back in our thoughts, in our lives, in our actions. because as I say, Betala Jivan, Jivan nahi hai. That which is unrhythmic, that life is no life. May Goddess Saraswati Bhagavati Sa Mam Patu Saraswati Bhagavati Nishesha Jadyapaha. May she remove all the sloth, anger, anxieties, and the pandemics from our minds and our lives. May she protect us. Namaskar.
Thank you. We're grateful to Dr. Sonal Mansingh ji for giving such an enlightening beginning to this webinar. Moving further, for the keynote address, we have Dr. Chudamani Nandagopal, who would be exploring the Tala Pramana in sculpture and rhythm, the life beats of Indian arts. Professor Chudamani Nandagopal, an internationally acclaimed art historian, PhD from Mysore University, is at present the Tagore Senior National Fellow at National Museum, Delhi. She established art history department at Trikalaa Parishad and served the institution for 18 years, teaching art history to artists and researchers. She was the academic head at IGNCA and set up research department in the field of fine arts in Bangalore University and Jain University. She holds multiple positions at various prestigious institutions. She has authored in the fields of sculpture, architecture, Indus civilization, dance and music, etc. She has traveled widely on academic assignments, consultancy projects at national and international museums and universities and culture-related organizations. Welcome, ma'am. Over to you.
I request you make me host to share my screen, please. I have to share my screen. Om Gurubhyo Namaha. Am I audible? Hello? Hello?
Yes, madam. You are audible.
You are audible.
Yes, you are audible.
You can also see the slides.
No.
Slide we are not able to see.
Visuals?
No, we are not able to see any visuals.
Be done then. I think you have to make me the host. Then I'll be able to share the screen.
You're already the co-host, ma'am.
I don't think co-host can share. That's the problem.
Yeah, we've again made you the host.
Please. Yes. Can you see?
No.
Hello? Hello?
Madam,
we can hear you.
You are the host, madam, now. Now you can share the screen.
It's already there. Should I start again?
You can share the screen.
Yeah, 1 minute. I'm not getting that. Very good.
Somebody can help her, please.
Hello? Hello? Oh, there is no icon showing. Hello?
Ma'am, can you make me again the host, Aatmalaya Trust?
I can't see those.
On the right side of Aatmalaya,
No, it's
I'll
not.
just put on my video.
It's not there.
Here you'll have an option next to my window. You'll have to make me host again. Can everybody else kindly mute your speakers? We had made you co-host because already there are two other hosts, screen sharing Rehana and Malavika, the anchor. So we made you co-host, but then you became the full host now. So you need to make back myself or Malavika as a host. Then we give you the permission again. Request Mr. Vijay Kumar to please mute.
ಇಂತಪ್ಪವರ ಕಂಡಡೆ ನಾಚುವೆನಯ್ಯ ಗುಹೇಶ್ವರ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಷ್ಟೇ ಡಾಂಬಿಕ ಭಕ್ತಿ ಕುದಿಗೆನಲ್ಲಿ.
Madam, if you are finding difficulty without slides, can you tell?
It won't be good. It has no relevance at all if there is no slide.
Maybe we can we have going for the second one? By that time we'll be able to understand where lies the problem and we'll be able to deal with that.
To say next this one.
The second speaker, I mean, I'm just sharing my thoughts.
About.
That should be fine, no, madam. So somebody can help you. Meanwhile, the second speaker can talk.
Yes, next speaker can start.
I think the next, yes, by the time we'll be able to sort out the problem.
Yes.
Malavika, you can go on to the next speaker, please.
We have Dr. David Clement and Dr. John Mcdonough who would be elaborating on Stolen Time, the concept of rubato in European classical music. David Clement is Associate Professor of Music at Lehman College. He's held residencies at the Mcdonough Colony and has received Fulbright Fellowship to India, where he was a visiting professor at Delhi University. David's been commissioned by the American Composers Forum, the Cygnus Ensemble, flutist Tara O'Connor, and the Creviston Fader Duo. His PhD dissertation, India's Music in Western Composers, Concept History and Recent Music, has led to scholarly papers presented at the National Society for Music Theory Conference, the South Asian Conference in Madison, UNESCO in Paris. He has a master's in theory and composition from the University of Colorado and a PhD in composition from Princeton. John Mcdonough, who's recently described as the New England master of the short piece, is a composer who tries to play the piano and a pianist who tries to compose. He is professor of music and director of graduate music studies at Tufts University. His output concentrates on vocal chamber and solo instrumental works and includes interdisciplinary experiments. He also taught at Boston University, Longy School of Music, MIT, and the Rivers Conservatory previously. He was the Music Teachers National Association Composer of the Year in 2007 and served as the Valentine Visiting Professor of Music at Amherst College. Welcome, Dr. David Clement and Dr. John Mcdonough.
Thank you very much. Can people hear me?
Yes, we can, David, we can.
Okay,
But
thank you. Thank you
Right.
very much. First of all, I do want to thank the organizers, in particular, Dean Deepti, for the invitation, and we're very happy to be here. It's nice during the lockdown to get out of New York and be in India for a little while. So I'll also need to do some screen sharing. So I'll need to, can I be allowed to do that? It says it's disabled. It's a similar situation. Again, I need to be able to share the screen to show my slides. And it says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
We seem to be stuck unless Dr. Chudamani ma'am is able to make one of us the host again, either Aatmalaya or Malavika Ajikumar.
Sir, please try it right now. I've enabled it.
Yeah, there might be a way to allow different, let's see, does it say, oh, I think maybe, just a minute. Thank you. Okay, now you can see my dog. Okay, एक minute. All right. Can people see the slide?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay.
Yes, we
the
can.
title of Stolen Time? Okay, very good, very good. So some of you might know that I have studied Carnatic and Hindustani music to some extent. I don't know very much because I know how much there is to know. However, one thing I noticed is that there's a kind of rhythmic practice that happens in Western music, in Western classical music, that I have not heard in Hindustani or Carnatic music. So I thought it would be interesting presentation for a different idea of rhythm. And it's something called rubato, which is an Italian word. Most of our classical terms come from Italian. And it's mostly used in 19th century European classical music. Now, Dr. Mcdonough, who is actually my composition teacher, as well as a good friend, is an excellent pianist, and he's going to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give a quick introduction to the concept, and then we'll go on to have John play piano for us to demonstrate the idea. Now I should be able to go to the next slide. Okay, here's just a basic definition of rubato. It actually means stolen time, which is sort of funny. In performance, it's the practice of making the established pulse flexible by accelerating and slowing down the tempo. This is a little bit different than Tala, I would imagine. And it's used for expressive purposes, to make the music more emotionally expressive. One of the interesting things about rubato is that it's not notated. I know Indian people think all our classical music is notated. Well, a lot of it is notated, but there's some things that aren't notated. Rubato is not notated, and it's left to the performer to decide how to play the rubato. But again, there are stylistic conventions that are taught and learned and understood by the players. You can't do anything. There are certain ways to do it, and some ways that you shouldn't do it. And as an example, we're going to use a piano composition by the composer Frederick Chopin, who lived from 1810 to 1849. He's an interesting guy. He only lived 39 years, and he composed mostly short pieces for solo piano. He didn't write big operas, symphonies, long, complicated pieces, just these little jewels. Even though he just wrote short piano pieces, he's in the top rank of composers because the music is considered so beautiful and so delicate, particularly his harmonies, although we're not going to be talking about harmony today. We'll be looking at a piece called the Mazurka. and it's in 3/4 time. That would be Rupakam in Carnatic, and or I don't know, Tishra, I don't know the Hindustani term for 3 Hindustani music. And just a little background, Mazurka was a dance from Poland, but as I think you also can find in Hindustani and Carnatic music, sometimes music that starts out as a dance becomes an instrumental composition. And that's what happened with the Mazurka. Although I think people still do dance this, but this is an instrumental composition. Nobody would actually dance to this composition, although it comes from a dance form. The Mazurka, short introduction. There's an A section and then a B section, and then the A section comes back. The A section is an A minor, which could be considered Asavari or Nataraja. The B section is an A major, Bilaval or Shankarabaranam. The A section comes back. However, the A section in A minor is highly chromatic. So there are many other notes besides the A minor scale. Really, there's 2 mas, there are 2 das, there are 2 gas. It's really, you can use all 12 svaras. And yet, underlying it is a natural minor, which would be similar, at least the basic scale, to Asavari and Nataraja. So the A section repeats 4 times. It's the same melody. It's a little bit, I guess, like Sangatis in Carnatic music. You've got 4 different versions, A1, A2, A3, A4. It's the same melody, but varied. Now, I've notated only the right hand. It'll be easier for people to follow. This is what I want people to listen to. And I've also put, you can see the sargam syllables underneath. And I'll play it in a minute. So A section, 4 times. B section, 4 times. A section comes back. And I didn't notate all of the A section. Okay, so now I've made a computer version of the piece so people can get familiar with the melody. This is all to just give you some background before John plays for us. So let me just start it playing, and let me know if you can hear it, if the sound is coming through. Oh, you know what? I forgot to share computer sound. Did I? Just a minute. That should be better. It's not going to let me do it. Let me know if you can hear this.
Yes, sir.
Does it sound clear? Does it sound okay? Is it loud? Loud enough? Let me try the screen share just 1 minute. There's a way to share computer sound, but it wants a password, which I don't think I have. It's my wife's password. No, doesn't like it. Okay, we'll just do it like this. Again, this is just for people to get familiar with the melody via sargam before we get to rubato. 1, 2, 3, re, da, ga, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, ma, pa, da, ma, pa, re, ga, ni. A again, but decorated. Again, 3rd time. Now, change to major. Second time, doesn't change much. Third time, it's very simple. It's and last time. Back to minor with como da, re ga, da ma, da re. Okay, and it continues from there. Oh, sorry. Okay, so was that people able to hear that all right? Hello?
David, could you be a little more louder? Can
Okay,
you be a
sure.
little more loud?
Yeah. Were people able to hear the piano okay? Or hear the computer
Yes.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. So now what we'd like have John actually play the piece on a real piano, not just a computer, and show us what is rubato. Hello, John.
Hello, David. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. Yeah, it's fine.
Can you hear the piano?
Sounds good. Pretty good.
Yeah, we can hear.
So shall I start, David?
Yes, whenever you're ready. John, stop. Who is your teacher? That's all wrong. Who showed you to play like that? Where's the rubato? What are you doing?
You're my teacher.
Okay,
What did I do wrong, David? What did I do wrong?
there was no rubato. You played everything with even rhythm, steady beats. That's not rubato. That's not the correct way to play this kind of music. You know that. You're not giving a good demonstration. So can you play it again with rubato?
All right. Do you want me to play the whole thing that way?
I think so, yeah. And if there's time, you can do it more than one way.
All right.
So now you'll hear the same piece with rubato, which is the slowing down and speeding up. Thank you, sir. That was
Excellent teacher, sir.
that was a good demonstration. I hope people understand that we planned for him to play it incorrectly.
Yes, please. Excellent, excellent, magnificent.
Just to show the contrast. Thank you. And I don't know if we're out of time now, we could move on, or if there's a couple of minutes, people can ask questions, but I don't want to keep the program from moving forward.
We would have the question answer session at the end of the event, so that after all the presenters are done.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, everybody. I hope this was educational and enlightening. Again, I can't think of something in Hindustani or Carnatic music like that. The only thing I could think of is during a lap, people can play the same phrase faster and slower, but there's no tal, so it's not really the same. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. David and Dr. Joan, for such an engaging and melodious presentation. It was such a wonderful experience listening to the rubatos, especially the planned incorrect version. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
As said earlier, we'll have the question answer session at the end of the event, so that all our presenters are represented equally towards the end. So moving forward, we could not have our keynote address due to some technical issues, so we would be having that right now. I would invite Dr. Chudamani Nandagopal ma'am to please start your presentation. Ma'am, you're able to present the screen now. I've enabled that for you. Ma'am, can you unmute yourself? Ma'am, now you're audible and visible, ma'am.
Yeah. So just a minute, please. ಇಲ್ಲಮ್ಮ ನನಗೆ ಇದು ಬರ್ತಾನೆ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಶೇರ್ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಬರ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಇಲ್ಲಮ್ಮ
ಮ್ಯಾಮ್, ಕೆಳಗೆ ಗ್ರೀನ್ ಕಲರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಣ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ವಾ? ಕೆಳಗೆ ಐಕಾನ್ಸ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಇದೆ. Can you see share screen and share audio with screen also will come later.
All screen was coming earlier. Now nothing is coming. It's not opening also. What should I do now?
It's enabled, ma'am. From our end, it's enabled, ma'am.
Waste of time. Okay. I'll take another next speaker. I don't want to waste time. I'll try.
Ma'am, do you want to speak up a few words now, which is like a keynote, and then come back with the PowerPoint? Is that okay?
No, Padmaja, because the link will be gone.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Please take next.
Right.
Okay, ma'am. So we have Dr. R.S. Nandakumar, who would be expounding on the concept of Trikalaa, meter, prosody, and periodization in Prabandha. Dr. R.S. Nandakumar is a natural musician and a fourth-generation musician in the parampara of Sri Tyagaraja, son and disciple of Padma Shri Mahamahopadhyay, Dr. R.S. Satyanarayan of national fame. Mr. Nandakumar is unique in the whole of India in resurrecting and reviving the beautiful and ancient wealth of song heritage of Indian music of more than 1,000 years ago. He presents them in attractive contemporary settings on modern platforms. He has carried out extensive research into the musical heritage of the great Haridasas of Karnataka. His thesis on Sri Padaraya, a musicological study, was awarded D.Litt by Kannada University, which traces the evolution of Karnataka music to its historical point. His musicological research inquiries into the Indological texts and their performance contemporizations are hailed as path-making, pioneering works by the national and international scholastic fraternity. We welcome you, sir. Over to you.
I'm extremely happy to be here. I take this opportunity to thank the Trikalaa Gurukulam, which is doing magnificent work, actually. It is an artist's dream to host such great institution and with a great vision also. And I thank Aatmalaya for having invited me here. And I'm deeply indebted to Dr. Deepthi Omchari Laji. She has always been talking to me about how innovative things can be done and how she's inspiring me to do all these things. In fact, the very title of my presentation today, the Matra Kala, came from her. She gave me all the basics of that and talked to me about it. And then I said, aha, Matra Kala. Matra and Kala is there in our Indian music. Right from its very first classical text. But what is so great about hosting it and talking about it now, we have been living with that Matra and living with this Kala. And what are we doing now? Talking about the same thing, doesn't it become a Charvita Charvana? Saying the same thing over again and chewing on that once again. Now, Dr. Deepthi ji cleared that out. She said, perhaps there can be a new idea to this. And she gave me another wonderful idea about how the talas can be ritualistic too. Just like the chandas, the Vedic Chandras and the Laukika Chandras that of the Vedic recitation, for example, the Sama recitation can bring in, our Matra Kala in music can also bring in a new concept. And with that, I came up with this Dhyaya Vakya. Kalavakasha Bhumikayam Tatvanusandhana Saudha Sandhanam. My idea was, if you are given a Kalavakasha, the time frame, and that will become a Bhumika, the playground for Tattvanusandhana, to create, to think, to intellectualize on, and that itself, Tattvanusandhana over its course of time will become the Saudha. You will be creating music, the body of music on that. So pure time now becomes a Bhumika, a playground, so that we can build Tattvanusandhana and that. And not just that, the Kala is so embedded in us, we don't just build, we also do the Anusandhana while we are building. And then one of the scholars here, in a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Umakanta Bhatta, created this in Indra Vajra Vritta, a Laukika Chandas. He said, Kala Vakasha Hita Bhumikasu Sattvam Sada Dhimahi Sartha Tattvam. It means the same thing, but it is in a Vritta. And now this Vritta can be sung actually in Pratitala of the ancient Deshi Talas. And now I have a few, I want to sing a few things. I actually wanted to do some screen sharing and all that. I was totally discouraged, believe me. because it can be a very daunting task. And so I said, take the easy way of a musician, sing it all. And with your kind permission, permission of the chair, and the permission of Deepthi Balaji, I would like to sing wherever I would like to. Now, Matra and Kala, the lexicon, the Koshartha, actually gives very interesting meaning for Matra. Matrika actually means a prabandha or mixture of two karanas. And now Matra, actually in music, as you already know, are the single most unit, a unit to determine the time of Tala. It's a quantity of measurement of time. And now this time in Deshi Tala or the Suladi Talas and various Talas that we have in vogue in India is actually can be termed as the Laghu Pramana. Laghu is the Talanga. It's one of the part of a Tala. And now this Matra is a Laghu Talanga Pramana. Some of the Shastra texts also give a very interesting feature of this. It is a half measure of time taken by a Panchami bird to utter a swara. This is there in the wonderful text of the Kohala Matam. Kohala Matam is also a tantric text where it combines the tantra and music together, and for the first time gives out the modus operandi for Diksha, Sangeeta, and Natya Diksha. Anyway, and if you can create laghu in a particular pattern, if you can group together the laghus, and that becomes a varna, and the time taken to utter 5 such laghu varnas is also called as the Matra Karala. And Matra, as you already know, is one of the names of the Shrutis. And now the Kala. The great Sharangadeva, who's written the Sangeet Ratnakara, gives Kala and Kala as a very interesting measure. He actually makes this two distinctive definitions. He says, for Tala, Nana Margayehi Layo Yatra Yatinam Syat Kala Nidhau Tam Dakshinam Shivam Naumi Chittam Vrittimayam Dhruvam Talaha Tala Pratisthayam Iti Dhator Ghai Smritaha. It is, he says, Tala is Tala Pratishtha. For both music and dance, as you know, the Tala is the Pada Prishtha or the Hasta Prishtha. Talaha Tala Pratisthayam Iti. So if you bring down the hand like that, or bring down the foot like that on the ground, and now that becomes the Tala Pratishtha Yam Iti. And now the Dhatu for Tala is the Ghai Pratyaya. That is the Kriya itself. The Ghai Pratyaya signifies the Kriya. And now he goes on to give a utility. Geetam Vadyam Tatha Nrityam Yatah Tale Pratishthitam. And it is a wonderful thing. Yatah Tale Pratishthitam. For both Gita, Vadya, and Nritya, it all occupies the Tala, and the Tala will take time. And now I try to give you another shloka from Aumapatam. The whole idea why I took this title Matra Kala is that I want to give a new insight, or perhaps I want to understand it in a new way about the Matra and the Kala. How the Matra, which is so extensively applied in the Chandas, in the Samagana, and now our music has come from the Samagana, and the Samagana uses the Chandas, and now the Talas also took this cue from the Samagana Chandas, that is the Vedic Chandas. And since then, the lyrical content of, or the Vak Prapancha of our Bharata evolved many other Laukika Chandas for Kavya and Shastra Nirmana and all that. And by putting all these things together, the Indian system of Tala categorized it in a very orderly way and then segmented it in properly and gave us the Tala Sharangas, the Laghu, Dhrita, Pluta, Kakapada, and the Mahakakapada, and all that. And now one of the earliest texts in Indian musicology, that is the Aumapatam by the Umapati, gives a very beautiful description of that. And I would like to sing that in a raga, raga, Yashapa. Raga exposed in the Aumapatam itself. Now we have that watches the Saraswati as we see raga now. Bhutotpattim pravakshyami dehotpattim cha Parvati. The Shiva explains to Parvati, and the Parvati says, when did the Nada and the Tala henceforth come, so that you are singing so all these beautiful prabandhas? And now Shiva goes ahead and says something very interesting. Bhutotpattim pravakshyami dehotpattim cha Parvati vinatayoho parijnanam samyajnanam na budhyate Mahapralaya kale api sarvabhutapaharini akashanadayoho nasti sukshmayoho kshaya sangamaha. As you can understand, Shiva says, originally there was nothing. Tadeva bhuvanasya asya. Once the bhuvana happened, karanam sakalasya cha bahyabhyantarayoho devi nadotpattikaranam. Many science students will know that this is what the physics says. The universe happened. And that's what this line says. Tadeva bhuvanasya asya karanam sakalasya cha bahyabhyantarayor devi nadotpatti karanam yatra nadasya sambhutihi tatra tatra talo vijrambate nadatmakamidam devi nadatmakamidam devi sarva talamayim jagat. And the next shlokas will give the Laghu, Guru, Pluta, Kakapada, Hamsapada, and Maha Hamsapada, and Dhrita and Anudhrita. Now, this Anudhrita is actually Virama. While I was listening to the previous speaker about in his speech, he said, Rubato, I was thinking perhaps our Virama Kala Akshara Pramana, that can give us future experimentation on Indian music acquiring this Rubato, because they're playing that, he's playing it in particular rhythm, and then suddenly he actually goes into a sort of a avadhana and then slows it up or speeds it up. And instantly in the listener, the emotive expression comes without ishta or kanishta. And I believe the emotive expression, when we have the emotion or the bhava usually comes with ishta, like, or anishta, or the dislike. But in music, there are no likes or dislikes. Only the anubhava is there. And if Anubhava becomes anusandhana, that is palpable to our intellect. Now that becomes aesthetic or the rasa, because the listener or the performer is doing the anusandhana and referring to what I would like to call as the bhavakosha, the lexicon of feelings. And now in that rubato, I could feel that lexicon of feelings. The player is referring to that. And this matra kala gives rise to virama kala. In that virama, though the rhythm continues, the kala continues, and the matra also is specific in that kala, but the virama aspect that Indian music has given to us based on the chandas, it is called the chando virama. It has that can give our contemporary music a new added dimension. Anyway, now I take the kala. Kala is the pramana in between the two ghatas, talas, talat pratishtha. If I have two beats, the time taken in between two beats, including its silence, is the kala pramana. And the great Shangadeva immediately jumps in and says, look, if you have kala, the kala is the silence. And now kala is silence. You see, it's a magnificent description that the great author gives us in his Sangeet Shastra book. The kala is the silence. Ghatanantara Vishrantihi iti layaha comes to the mind. If you have two beats and within the two beats there is a silence, just like ahata and the anahata. Ahata, that comes with striking, the nada which comes with striking. Anahata, that continues without striking. It is still audible. Just like that, the kala and kala are similar to the ahata and anahata for tala. And now, let me jump a little about the chandas. Vedika chandas, now what Dr. Deeptiji told me is right. Vedika chandas gives rise to a lot of ritualistic experiences from the Veda point of view. And this Vedic chandas gave rise to the Tala Pramana, as can be seen in the Naradiya Shiksha. And now the Veda chandas has been very beautifully explained in this Charana Vyuha. Chandah padau tu vedasya hastau kalpaha atha pathyate jonam chakshuhu niruktam shrotrumuchyate. Shikshaghranatu vedasya mukham vyakaranam smritam tasmat sangam adhiyat yaiva brahmaloke mahiyate. It gives you the entire picture of what the chandas actually contains and how the chandas reflects the Veda. And now chandas has pada with which the Veda moves in its recitation. And while it's moving, it gives you the ruk artha. And if you put it together with anusandhana, the Veda mantra becomes, the Veda ruk becomes a Veda mantra. And this shloka gives out. And now immediately the Naradiya Shiksha jumps in and says something about the matra lakshana, which is very thought-provoking. At once, this shloka gives out a comprehensive meaning about matra and kala, wherein it can be used for its performance, for its practice, and its teaching also. Trisro vrittayo bhavanti dhrita madhya vilambita iti. There are three vrittas for the matra lakshana. Dhrutayam vrittau Trikalaa matra bhavati. In the dhrita, the faster tempo, the Trikalaa matra bhavati. There are three matras, and that is dhrita. And Chatushkala madhyamayam. If there are four, it is madhyama. And madhyama is for the performance as well as practice. And Panchakala vilambitayam. Panchakala is the vilambita, that is an extended, stretchable rhythm, or the tala or the kala pramana. And he goes on to say, abhyasarthe dhrutam vrittim. If you have to do it in Trikalaa, that is dhrutam vrittim. And prayogarthe tu madhyamam. And now madhyama is just like Rubato. You can speed up and go to Trikalaa, and you can come down to Vilamba and to Panchakala, but it has to come back to Madhyama, so that Shrotra Chitta Sukhabhaha, Shrotra has to enjoy that. And there are two Shrotras, as many of the performers here already know. That is, the performer himself is the first Shrotru, and then his audience comes. And now this shloka is very important in the Naradiya Shiksha for the Matra and Kala. And it gives in one way, one beautiful description of both the Matra and the Kala in a very palpable way. And where there is a Tala, there is always a Tala, Antarala, Avritti also. Given a Tala is a cyclic happenstance of given rhythmic patterns. And this shloka gives something about that. Talantarala Avritti, Tala Avarti, Tala Antarala Avarti, Yakkala Syat Layanamakaha. If you take all that pattern, that becomes the Layanamakaha. And then he goes, what is the pramana of the Tala? What is the matra of this? Yela, you have cardamom, Yelaki, Amalaka, you all know Amalaka, and Bilva, the Bilva. This is Dhrita Madhya Vilambita. Yela, that is the minimum point. If you just put it into one Yela, that is taken as one matra kala. Amalaka, if you can break the Amalaka, the time taken for Amalaka is the Madhya, and Bilva used for various other purposes, like, Ayurveda uses a Bilva, and a good Ayurveda doctor will tell you how the Bilva is readied for Anupaka, for Aushadha, and that is Vilambita. And in Veda recitation, the rhythm laya is called the vritti again. And in music also it is the vritti. And the entire musical phase also in the ancient India was called as vritti. Thus, its constituent is called as the matra. The vritti constituent is the matra. In Chandas, a matra can be a unit or a group of units that make up a gana. In Vedic Chandas, the Kala, Marga, and Kriya are the constituents. The time duration is a generalized name. If you recite one Veda Chandas in that particular order, and that becomes the Kala Pramana for Veda. However, in Indian music, Kala is a paribhasha, it's a terminology. Such Kala is further segmented into various angas, body parts, sub-parts, main parts, and Pratyanga is the sub or the mini anga. These together in a required order, but set to certain rules and regulations, constitute a cyclic occurrence called the Tala. A Tala is a rhythmic structure, as I already explained. The Nishabda in a Tala is the Kala. The time duration in between two Sashabda are Kala. The time cycles thus formed are further categorized under 10 pranas. Again, the Chandas has 10 pranas and Tala has 10 pranas. And the melodic, that is the Ragatva, in order to establish the Ragatva, Raga also has 10 pranas. And the Manusha has 10 pranas. The Chandogya Upanishad says the Jiva bestowed by the cosmic entity creates prana, and this prana comes from the Angushta in the Garbha. And the Jiva enters from the top of the head, the Shiraha, and the Jiva comes in first and attracts the prana through the Angushta, and then the prana now interacts with the Panchabhutas to create the 5 kinds of Indriya, the Panchendriyas, the Karmendriyas, and the Tatpara Jnanendriyas. The Panchendriya and Karmendriya gives us the Upadhi, and with this we can perform music. That's what the Chandogya Upanishad says. And the Chandogya Upanishad, the 2 or 3 types of the chandas used, is today used for all agamic purposes in almost all the South Indian temples. Kalo, Margaha, Kriya, Angani, Graho, Jatihi, Kala, Layaha, Yatihi, Prastarakan cha iti Taladasha Pranas Vritaha. At the end comes the Prastara, the computation. And our performance happens on this Prastara. Indian music has taken both the Vedika Chandas and Laukika Chandas. And like that, using the Vedika Chandas, most of the Margatala was performed in 3s and 4s and 5s as the Laghu Pramana. And the Laukika Chandas later was taken to create so many Deshi Talas. The latest grouping is 108 Deshi Talas or 128 Deshi Talas. Anyway, and the 128th or the 108th, according to that computation, the Simhanandana Tala is taken by the Kuchipudi people to use it to create the Simha while they dance. And now this comes with 4 segmentation. The Simhanandana dance has the 4 padas, and using these 4 choreographical techniques or the Kaushalata, the dance use creates the Simhanandini. And that goes to prove that the Vedika Chandas of the Sampagveshtaka or some other Deshi Tala now directly contributes to its performance. And one of the greatest talas that we had, the Pratimantha Tala, later it came as Adi Tala, 18th century, uses the Laukika Chandas in many of its constituents. And this gave rise to Prabandhas. While in its transition, the Indian music actually had to get away or evolve or embellish than the Chandas and created its own Talas and Angas and made that as a standalone entity. In order to embellish the performance item called the Prabandha, another element was added, which was already there in the Vaidika Vedaruk as well as the Laukika Sahitya, that is the Prasa. Adi Madhyanta Prasa, Muhuna Prasa, Muhuna Adyanta Prasa, and all those things. Muhuna Prasa, the moment I say that, many of my friends from Kerala will immediately point their fingers to Swati Thirunal and Muhuna Prasa. Anyway, I would like to perform an Ela Prabandha, a Karnat Ela Prabandha, which ensconces all this. I'm just performing it with I humbly performed this before you, just to say that how in that transition, it was a transition period, 1,200 years ago or 1,100 years ago. It was a transition period where the music was coming away from its dependence. It was coming away from the Gandhara Grama into the Grama, the Madhyama Grama and the Shadja Grama, the 2 Gramas on which the entire music was performed. And the Talas came away from the Marga while ensconcing it. It also took the Deshi Talas, which was created. The Deshi Talas inspired by the Laukika Chandas, Marga Tala inspired by the Veda Chandas. And believe me, there is a huge difference in between these two. I wouldn't like to go deeply into it because the next speaker will, next day speaker I see, I eagerly look forward to his speech, will enlighten us on that, I hope. Now, the Ela comes in 4 segments. Matra Ela, and if you group all these Matra, it becomes Gana and Gana Ela. And if you combine all this and give it to a Desha, it becomes a Deshaila. And if you make a combination of all this, it becomes Sankarela. So there are 4 varieties of Elas. right from the 5th century, right from the Matanga's time, these 4 elas are very highly, beautifully described. Elas have Tala Niryukti, and there is a set Tala, and Chando Niryukti also. But the Tala, the use of Tala and the Chanda always comes with Virama. In that Virama, there is a Karshana of time. The Matra is Karshana, that is, it is attracted into the fold of Tala, and the Tala unit at that time, the Talanga itself, takes perhaps a little more time, or it's a little compressed. This is the Virama Tattva, and the Ela composition was the very first in India to do this, use this Virama Tattva. As you know, when the society evolves a language, the Gita comes along, the Sahitya comes along with the Gita also comes along. And with this Gita, the Sangita is embellished. And ragas are the melodies depicting this entity or this civilization, or it's a community thing. Since I see that the time is jumping up, I would like to give a small demonstration of this Nandavati Ela. Actually, this was given to me this was composed for us by Shatabdani R. Ganesh. You know, I just went to his house and he gave me this. He just looked at me and listened to me and gave this. Actually, there are 5 lines here. In that, the Udgraha, Dhruva, and Abhoga comes. And he asked me to sing this in the Naga, in a Naganandini raga. So, with your permission, I would like to just give a small presentation of this. Here you will see the Chandas and Tala together. The Tala is just Adi Tala, 4 counts, that's all. But the Chandas is a Ragana Matya Tala. It's a Ganaila, Gana, Karnataila. The Takatakita is there, and the Takita at the end are Ta for the 2 segments. The Tattakara sometimes enjoys the Karshana. Tuhina karamani makuta veseye mudiyul. 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 Ahipatiya kulame todave nisalodalol. Ahipatiya kulame todave Ahipatiya kulame todaveri salodalol. Suratadini sumada saramenadu jadayol. Suratadini sumada saramenadu jadayol. Suratadini sumada saramenadu jadayol. Giritanaye, 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 Yadadege Soga Sutalaya, Giritanaye, Yadadege ಸೊಗಸು ತಳೆಯಲ್ ಸೊಗಸು ತಳೆಯಲ್ ಗಿರಿತನೆಯೇ ಸೊಗಸು ತಳೆಯಲ್ ಗಿರಿತನೆಯೇ ಎಡದೆಡೆಗೆ ಸೊಗಸು ತಳೆಯಲ್. And in that, side by side, the jati also comes in. Giddak dagina dham dham ginathunga dikkata nakka dittakka dhem hakadara ghadada rikta 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 ridara gada ghadada rikta rikta ridara gada kathonga tairi kathonga thonga thom. All these jatis come. All these are the series of ganas and the gana chandas. And on the same lines, there is another prabandha which was bereft of all these gana, matra and all that, but retained the thala as such. And it was by the Vitalamatya Kumar Lukuminarayana, who was a Bayakaru Todaramalla in the Vijayanagar Empire. He gave this. This perhaps is the very first prabandha extolling the various virtues of music, just music, and contents of music. Shruti saputa swara gramatanam vaya mandra madhyama taramuruchanam vaiye saputa swara raga suragu. Maragure Gita Rajanam Rajanaja Nitare Mama Risa Sasa Sanida Nisa Risa Nida Nida Papa Nisa Nida Nida Vaiye Saputa swara raga suragu. Bharata mata pavida vithala matya kumaru lakuminare ena bayakaru todaramalla saputa swara raga suragu. During the same time, Dandakas came and jumped into Karnataka music. For example, the Sri Padarajas, Sri Lakshmi Pradurbhava Uddanda Dandaka. It's again in the Panchamatra Gana, can be equated to that Karnataila very directly, but it's so different where the provisions of the Kala and the Kala are used on the basis of the Matra. Look, the Prahalada has done the Prarthana. The Narsimha is there in all his awesome avatara, and that this Lakshmi Pradurbhava Uddanda Dandaka describes that in one of the most beautiful Kannada phrases. Shatruvantippa putrakratim kanuta Bhagganta Digganta Sinhasanasthana Dindeddu Nindiddu Sambhashipam Tande Yelo 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 Mandane Manda Bhagyoktigal Yeke Ninaduviyo Kanda. The Hiranyakashipu asks, where is this Vishnu? And Prahalada says, Sarvatra, 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 Sarvatra no tande, Sarvatra deenendade, ee sabhastambadal, shigra samrambhadal toro, toro ni. Show this in this sabhastamba. And then the Narsimha comes. It's a beautiful, magnificent Uddanda Dandaka. But in the Shruti Saputa Swara, which is there in the Raganamatya Tala, the same pattern in the same chandas is used. At the same time, both these compositions evolved in the 16th century.
Nandakumarji, sorry to interrupt. Thank you. I mean, you are so spellbinding that a whole day will be required just to hear you, sir. But since we have 4 other speakers waiting for us, I request you to wrap up your wonderful presentation today. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
with this, I'm sorry I have taken, I know I get worked up on this, but thank you very much for giving me this extra time. And Matra and Kala, a relook at this in lieu, starting from the Prabandha, will give us a great in-depth knowledge as to how to do for our contemporary experimentations that we are doing in music and dance. And then this again, I would like to, out of my, just out of the mind, I just remembered another verse from the Aumapatam. With that, I will conclude my speech. Eka khadgadikrita vairirudiraihi anya tadiyangana बाष्पासार परंपरा विरपरा सत्पात्रदानां भुविः एकानेव भगीरथो भुवि नदी गंगमवती तरत् लोके अस्मिन् भुवनैकवीरा भवता नद्यश्च तस्त्रकृताः आधारलिंगनादो हृदये आधारलिंगनादो हृदय सरसिजे तालमूले ललाटे द्वे पत्रे षोडशारे द्विदश दशदले द्वादशार्धे चतुष्के वासान्ते फालपद्ये दथकरसहिते सारसर्गे क्षहान्ते मध्ये हंस ॐ हंस सुसूक्ष्मम् सकलदलयुतं वर्णरूपं नमामि. I thank again for giving me this extra time to speak. Perhaps the Matra Kala can itself be a subject discussion for an entire seminar. I understand that. But I hope my speech has been good enough so that new experimentation can be reinterpreted in our contemporary world of music and dance. There are new expressions coming where the tradition is still maintained. The experimentation is done with great samyama, and the samyama comes up with a new product which will again embellish the cultural field of our country, the cultural mood of our country. I thank this seminar, the Aatmalaya and the Gurukula, and I especially thank all the scholars who have listened to me with patience. And I thank Deepthi ji for giving me this opportunity. I thank you one and all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed our pleasure to listen to such an engaging and descriptive presentation with live demonstration. Thank you so much, sir. We're moving forward to Dr. Chudamani Nandagopal's presentation, which we could not have it earlier. She would be assisted by by Miss Aparna, who would be presenting the screen for her. Thank you. Chudamani ma'am, you can begin.
Om Gurubhyo Namaha. You have been listening to wonderful presentations. The one by Sonalji was like so philosophical it was, and the other two have expanded the horizon of Indian music and the significance of Tala in it. It was wonderful, a pleasure to listen to Nandakumar and Sonalji and Dr. David. I'm thankful to Dr. Deepthi and also Deepthi from Delhi and Dr. Padmaja Suresh from Bangalore. It's a very fine combination for Indian culture. So both of them are taking steps forward to see that Indian culture and art is enriched through such, seminars, which is very much required for the generations at present. Friends, you are observing on the screen the drop. Look at the laya or the tala in the drop and also observe the central point, that is the bindu. So you can see that the three parts in it, a bigger drop, the middle one, and the bindu. Bindu has given, it is like a womb emerging the life from there, it emits. So that is what the bindu is so sacred, so significant in Indian art, literature, in every art form. And one thing you should remember that Indian art cannot be segregated from one to another. They are integrated, and this discussion we see in Vishnu Dharmottara Purana, where to learn one art, you should be aware of other arts too, because there are certain things which are like underlying current to all art forms in India. Next, please. Next slide. Yes. So I'll be speaking, concentrating mainly on the Tala Pramana or Talamana in sculpture and architecture, how it revibrates in this visual art form. As you all know that rhythm is in nature, we call it as Prakriti. You have seen the laya in the raindrops, in the waves of the sea, in the breeze, and in the flow of river and the waterfall too. If you go and stand and listen, and that is what you can experience, that kind of, the very, very subtle vibrations which touches you. That is from the nature. So do we call the nature itself as arts? It's only you can think if you are a person who is having that aesthetic sensibilities to appreciate the nature. Nature appears as an art piece to you. But it is not art by itself. It can inspire the artist to create art. So it is like a kriya. It's a process of creation. It happens. And there will be eternal action and reaction. And when this action and reaction continuously forms as a process, it becomes or it forms as a kala taranga. So it is kala taranga or kala taranga. You see that it is the action and reaction what we see in the process of creation. So the artists, they will have a different levels of experience by experiencing or by while creating. They will have different levels of experience. So as you know, Laya is our breathing for our survival. Even if we don't breathe for even 5 minutes, your prana is nowhere. So prana and Laya, they are mutually dependent on each other for our survival. Next, please. So there are three things always in all art forms. We think that harmony, balance, and rhythm. For every activity, even in our life, we have to be having these three. So the rhythm has its own place in our life. So it is inherent, particularly in artistic creation. It can be dance, it can be music, painting, sculpture, or architecture. These three things are so inherent in them. Laya, as all of you know, it's a fleeting beats, whereas Tala is in the cyclic formation of continuity of Laya, even in sculpture. Just hitting 1, 2, 3, 4 will be the Tala using the chisel and the hammer. That is, the Laya is while completing the entire sculpture, he would have used the Tala Pramana. So rhythm is also associated with several terms like Tala, Laya, Gati, Taranga, Kala, Matra, Lagu, Dhruta. All these terminology are associated with the concept of rhythm. Tala is a Sanskrit term, originated. That means it's the bottom of the base. As you all know, Tala is the base for music, is for base for dance. Tala Mana is also basic for sculpture and architecture. You see how all arts are integrated, and Tala is the underlying current of all these art forms. Next, please. Now, what is governed this sculpture? This is space and time are the two aspects that govern the entire sculpture. Whether it is an individual murti or it is a composition, these two aspects are there. So this Nataraja, what we call it as dancing Shiva from Badami, which was ancient known as Vatapipura, from king number 1 in Ari Chalukyan period, just imagine how the artist, sculptor has created this great sculpture. And my friends, this is the earliest dance sculpture displaying the lakshanas of Bharatagama. That is the right. You will find, hastas of and left have and disturbance. So when you see the Tala is kept there, of course, while chiseling, the Tala definitely is kept. But the movement itself of Nataraja, you find the Kuttita Pada. It's very clear that he has just completed the movement, the unit, the entire thing, and comes to that particular posture. And the drummer, Tala Vadaka, he has just banged it. That means to say the Tala is coordinated with the entire composition. Even the Ganesha is also moving, and he has stopped with taking the insight from the main figure. Next, please. Next, please. Hello? Hello?
Why are the slides not moving, Aparna?
Next, please. Yeah. Now, Alice Boner, a sculptor and a scholar, she has studied all these sculptures from rock-cut cave temples, which are known as bas reliefs. And one of her favorite sculpture is this dancing Shiva. She has taken, as I mentioned to you, the space and time. These are the two aspects or concepts she has taken and tried to put the whole movement of Natasha in that time and space, concept. So in this space, you can see the bindu is in this particular part. So every movement or every aspect of Tala Pramana coordinates there. And then it is in the circular form, and even the mridangist is very clearly, giving the tala there. Next, please. The second one, what you see is the time division. That is what the Tala Pramana. So in this time division, it is not the horizontal and vertical is important, the cross movement of every limb, every organ is placed in that particular Tala Pramana. It's a great science understanding the space and time division in sculpture. Next. Next, please. Now you will be happy to see how Shiva himself is singing and giving tala also. You see his gesture of so beautifully. Around him are all the musicians, and two of them are dancing there. Such a beautiful, composition from Kanchipuram, Kailasanatha temple. It is 732, and whereas the first sculpture, what you have seen, the Natasha, is 560 Common Era. Next, please. Next. Now this is the Nataraja, which was created in 1012 Common Era during Chola period. You can observe, as I said, the baseline, the tala, that is the tala, the baseline. There you see the axis, vertical and horizontal axis meet in a point. That is the tala. And from there, the measurement starts. And you can also see Shivakami as a small figure. If she raises, then she will be conflicting with the flames. So she has given that position. And the Damaru, which is the original symbols creating everything, as you know, the Panchakritya of all the dancers of this particular Nataraja. I don't want to go into the details of that. Then you also see one dissipated sculpture of Karaikal Ammayar. Karaikal Ammayar was a beautiful lady. She started giving the symbols Tala to Shiva for dance, and she will not realize when she became old, dissipated, and ugly. The Kala just goes. So he is Nataraja, he is Layakaraka, he is Tala Pravartaka. So in sculpture, they have immortalized all these aspects. And this is the icon of Indian philosophy. Next, please. One more. This is another beautiful sculpture. Whenever you go to Delhi, please visit National Museum. And this is the embodiment of rhythm. When you see before this, you see that the whole gallery is in the rhythmic atmosphere. Such a beautiful sculpture is from National Museum. Next, please. Now you see that Talamana is very clearly explained here from the Kamika Agama. See, the Agama's texts are very important, which gives the Tala Pramana and the complete structure of how to take the measurement of every sculpture. So usually the face is taken as one measure, and then it goes into 10 or 11 or 9. So they are known as Dashap Tala Pramana or Navatala Pramana. And you can see those lines which is given there is the measurement between one segment. So beautifully it is explained in Kamikagama, scientifically explained. That is why Ananda Kumar Swami, his Dance of Shiva and other 14 essays opened up the scope for understanding dancing Shiva to the whole world. And Fritz Capra, the physicist, in his book, The Tao of Physics, he expresses or interprets the linkage between Vedic mythology, religious symbolism, and modern physics. So for modern physicists, Shiva's dance is the subatomic matter. See what a kind of rhythmic symmetry that is formed in this particular sculpture. Next, please. Now, who has created all this Tala Pramana? It is Vishwakarma. So this is the image of Vishwakarma you see in the Canada Culture Institute, where this particular sculpture, one of the very, very wonderful sculpture that they had created with all the Tala Pramana. So in the book, my book, The Art of Image Making, I have talked entire aspects of the sculpture, how image is made. So Vishwakarma is the earliest deity talked in Rigveda. So his antiquity goes to Rigveda, and then he is the creator of any form of visual arts. That is why he is so important for understanding Indian sculpture and architecture. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. Now, this is what you see the Vishwakarma when he is in action, when he is at work. He has only two, one hammer and one chisel. Can you think or imagine how such great, prasadas, that is the temple architecture, created by only these two tools. And see the size of tools here. With this, they create the sculptures and the architecture and the placement of sculpture in architecture. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. So when you see the rock, it will be like a boulder like this. And then the sthapati will go and check the sound. There are three types of shila, that is the stone, masculine, feminine, and neuter. So in masculine, he can listen. The sthapati, discerns sthapati, can listen the metallic tan, 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 that kind of sound. He beats in that kind of frequency. Then he selects the kurti to be kept in Garbhagriha. If it gives tuck, tuck, tuck sound, then it is for this is the feminine. So they can be used for any other, architectural or other sculptures. And the neuter will be tuck, tuck, tuck. See the difference. Tun, tun, tuck, 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 tuck. So three types of sound, rhythm, tala, and the selection is done. So the boulder becomes what? Next. Next, please. Now, ball a cut, it becomes a dressed tone. The dressed tone will be taken and then properly used for creating the icons. Next. Next, please. Now you see the sculptors are working on the icons. The one, what you see, the elderly person who is in Mahabalipuram, and he worked under Ganapati Sthapati, the great Ganapati Sthapati. And you can see him working there. And this is a student from Canara Bank School taking the block of stone and then working as a sculptor. And they have only in the hand a hammer and a chisel, as given by Vishwakarma. Next. Now, Tala Pramana, we have, like as I mentioned, Uttama Dashatala images. You can see like this. And even you'll be surprised that in the 7th century, Brihat Samhita gives the details of how to take measurement. Then later, you find Manasollasa of Someshwara Chakravarti. There is a very, very lengthiest chapter in Manasollasa is on sculptures. So he gives the measurement, even taking the measurement from the edge of eye to the other edge of eye, what would be the measurement? They take even that minute measurement and then incorporate that into it and then create. So every, there are many texts like Shilpa Shastra and Shilparatna, number of texts, then Agama texts, but there is also a Guru Parampara. The modules were created and the sculptors followed those modules of the Guru Parampara. Next, please. This is the female image, Devi images. So it will be usually in Uttama Navatala. And this is according to Kashyapa Shilpa. Is one of the very important texts. Even today, the sculptors follow this. And the other one is the Devi from National Museum collection. Next, please. Now, Talamana for other deities, divinities like Ganesha, Kartikeya and all that, they will have Uttama Panchatala images, and it's also from Kashyapa Shilpa. And you see that usually the sculptures will be standing or seated, and if it is Vishnu, it will be reclining. So also Buddha, standing Buddha, seated Buddha, and reclining Buddha. Next, please. I'll be concluding another 2, 3. Now you see the Talamana repetitive movement in architecture. So you may, they can take one, kudu like this, and they can take second kudu to the height, then third kudu can come down. No, they have not done that. You see that how symmetrically they move, the movement goes. So also when they take the next step, so the entire Shikara from bottom to the top has got the Tala. It has to go with that rhythmic movement in architecture. Next, please. This is Modera temple, the Solankis in 11th century. See the way, how beautifully that rhythmic symmetry you can experience in this particular, Koshtaka, Deva Koshtaka, and so beautifully, and the elephants as the base. Next, please. Yeah, this is from Karnataka, Hoysala architecture. This is the Vesara type of architecture. You see the rhythmic pattern, how it starts from here, as I said, it goes and culminates in the Amalaka, and finally it stops there. And the Kalasha, the finial will be there at the end. And why these things, the scrolls are running, repetitive scrolls running. So that repetitive, creation is nothing but giving that kind of, rhythmic patterns in the architecture. You can see every aspect of it. This is from Jinnanathapura, the Hoysala, 12th century. Next, please. Yeah, this is a wonder you find in Karnataka. Tala Taranga pillars. The pillar itself, if you take this pillar from the Hampi Vithala temple, when you hit this, they will have different sounds and you can hear it as though somebody is playing on an instrument. So he is also very close, this drummer. You may feel that is he playing or is it from this? So this is a great wonder that, architectural wonder that they have created this kind of, Tala Taranga in the Mantapa, one of the Kalyana Mantapa of Vithala Swami temple. And they see the drummer, even while creating the drummer, it will be, even the raising their hand, the beating their hand, the coordination of that. If it is nearby a dancer is there, you see how they are coordinated. In my first book, Dance and Music in Temple Architecture, all these things I have discussed in detail. Next, please. Now, this is from Ramappa temple from Telangana. See the rhythmic pattern of, using the whole pillar into a rhythmic pattern, the movements. So the Pindi Bandha is usually taken. You can see, how, very clear Pindi Bandha you can see here. And Dr. Vidya Kumari, she demonstrated when we were working on this project on Ramappa temple. The book has come out now. Next, please. Yes. So this is a great science and art. And it is also related to Tala Pramana, iconography. Iconography is another great science and art. Whole life has to be spent on that to understand. Because India, as Sonalji was saying, Bharatavarsha, has given us such wealth we have not explored at all. It's a very, very, only we are scratching the surface. I don't know how many generations it would take to really reach. Because everything starts from the Veda and it follows in all aspects. And see the contributors, great contributors in every field. I think India is the only country having such great texts on art forms, starting from Natashastra to 17th century. You don't know how many thousands and lakhs of manuscript still, will be there in various libraries for someone to come and, open it. Such great wealth we have in the country. And my, appeal to younger generation, please go to originals. Don't think of only, what you see around. The originals, once you touch, you will be a different person, different artist. So that is what is needed for India now, because stage of just understanding, that's over. Go to the next stage. Go to the originals. Work hard. And then come out with your own understanding of our art forms. So I thank you for giving me this opportunity. I have not touched even a small, because while creating the sculpture, even one scratch, extra scratch, it is unworthy for worship. So many rituals are there for prana pratishta and opening of the eyes of the deity. There is a great, great process because they are giving the prana to that particular icon. Otherwise, it was a boulder. Imagine the role of the sculptor. So this is, it's an eye opener for us. And as you all know, IGNCA is the only, institute which is giving all this kind of, knowledge to the people. So please make use of all these things. And Dr. Deepthi and Dr. Padmaja Suresh have taken the path, right path. And I'm always with them. So I know that, whatever my understanding of art, it's very minimum. As I said, I can be always with you. And it's pleasure to hear the other 2 days scholars presenting. And I wish a fruitful conference, seminar of these 2 days, and thank for inviting me to speak on the sculpture and Tala Pramana. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful presentation of deriving and demonstrating the rhythmic aspects of this art of sculpting. Thank you so much, ma'am, for ending on such an inspirational note. Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Rajashri Warrior, who would be enlightening us on emotions in rhythm. Dr. Rajashri Warrior is an eminent Bharatanatyam exponent, educator, and scholar of the country, widely recognized as across the globe for her impeccable abhinaya and unique concepts. She's one of the most sought-after performer and guru in Bharatanatyam. She's a musician and owns a PhD in music from Department of Music, University of Kerala. She's also a writer on arts, an empaneled artist of ICCR. Dr. Rajashri is an A-grade artist of Doordarshan in Bharatanatyam. She's also the founder and director of Uttarika, Center for Bharatanatyam, Carnatic Music and Experimental Theatre. She's also recipient of a number of accolades. To name a few are Devadasi Deshiya Nritya Puraskar, Kerala Sangeet Natak Academy Award, etc. She imbibed the rudiments of Bharatanatyam from Guru V. Maithili and later got trained under Guru Jayanti Sunan. In music, she's primarily G. Ravindranath. Unfortunately, there are some connectivity issues at her place, so she would be joining us on a pre-recorded presentation. So we can see it on the screen. Over to the screen. Also, it's a request to all the attendees to kindly keep yourself muted all the time. And if you have any questions, kindly type it down on the chat screen, chat box. We can take it up at the Q&A session. Thank you. We're trying to play it. Kindly also stop your video so that there is no lag in the video that would be played on screen. Thank you.
Namaste. Let me express my sincere Dr. Deepthi Omchiriphala and Srimati Padmaja Suresh for giving me this opportunity to express myself through CHIDAAKAASHAM. I shall now share my experience with Layam as a dancer, as a musician, and as an occasional writer. So how is time heard? This is a question which I frequently ask myself. When uttered or unuttered, does it carry any emotion when heard? Does any bhava or emotion occupy its silent interiors? When do you say that time can be heard? Or how is the time felt? Is it through the mode of reckoning, adhering to the basic method of tala enunciation, that is, putting talas to make it visible of its angas or many components? Is that when actually you feel the time? These angas may perhaps bring the space to emerge as visible, thus brightening the space, otherwise invisible, sometimes to throw light to its deep, dark, layered shades of emotion. In a way, time reckoned is also the space felt through senses, like an idea which takes its time by a pull of momentary creative urge, like a seed in its trip to germination to become a word. So, like an idea which takes its time to become a word. And time travels in its own deeps, lows, centers, fringes, tops, highs, to become the exact emotion it intends to become. Time in its curves and straight lines manifests into two or many different entities. Time shows you the space and its intentional emotion or intended emotion. While the emotional range is defined by the nature of progression, it could be in terms of shapes like linear, non-linear, curves, curvy. It could also be in terms of its pace of progression, slow, medium, high. It could also be in association with its increasing or decreasing volume. That is how time gives out or brings out the intended emotion. In fact, I have done an experimental production some time ago. It's an abstract one, in fact, envisioning time as a metaphor to contain seasons, emotions, panchabhuta in the cycle of birth and death. Connecting the idea to the cohesion of elements in a seed, its ideation and its thought of its own possibilities in germination, and its journey to achieve it and the actual germination as Vatavriksha. My production was titled Vatavriksha and it contained all these elements. Panchajati Alaripa was used in Ekatalam to represent the process of birth, germination, taking off from its idea of birth itself. I wanted to feel the time as in Tishra, Chaturashra, Khanta, Mishra and Sankirna in its roots, in its core, in its Vilamba Kala or Vilambatvam, the slowness, rather than the appropriated nature of nades. For example, Panjanade could be attributed a different kind of emotion altogether. This was totally different. So Eka Tala was a mold or was a crest of a seed, while Jatis, its instinctive emotions. So here is Vatavriksha, if you want to take a look.
Ya ti yum ta tam kitata kadite ya ti yum de ta tam kitata கிட்டத்தக்கதம் தித்தம் கிட்டத்தக்கதை தத்தை 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 கிட்டத்தக்கதம் தித்தம் கிடதகதை தத்தை கிடதகதம் தித்தம் கிடதகதை தத்தை கிடதகதம் தித்தம் கிடதகதை தத்தை கிடதகதம் தித்தம் கிடதகதை தத்தை ததித்தம் தித்தம் கிட்டத்தக்கதை தத்தை கிட்டத்தக்கதம் 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 தித்தம் கிடதகதை தத்தை கிடதகதம் 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 தித்தம் கிட்டத்தக்கதை தத்தை கிட்டத்தக்க
I shall now be drawing on the generic representations of emotions in respect with Nadi, which I have mentioned a while ago. For example, takatakita takatakita. For a spur of a moment, the cholla may recall the majesticity of Veeram. If you go deeper, the same interval takatakita may sound different on varied emphasis on syllables. For example, if takita taka takita taka takita taka takita is not exactly that manly or majestic. It has an emphatic quality about it, but it's not like takita dit takita taka takita tajam takita dit takita taka takita tajam. So here takita dit takita is more assertive and thus in a way represents or symbolizes Veeram. While ta-takita is like pulling along with a weight or might. It could be the movement of a mighty goddess as well. So sometimes the tonality, volume and the swing would even represent a gender. It all depends on how you articulate it through its tones, its emphasis, its pace. So in varying speeds, the same cholla may sound other aspects of Veeram or sometimes Shringaram. Even a carve of 5 is reflective of a clarity or boldness. For example, in a cholla which I have taken in an adava, in a varnam, ta kutanam ta tata kutanam ta dhalan kudakati kudakati nata. It goes like that, and in between Takutanam tatakutanam tajam tahat tajam tahat tajam tahat taddin ginnatum taddin ginnatum taddin ginnatum takutanam tatakutanam tajam tahat tajam tahat tajam tahat tadikittatum tadikittatum tadikittatu takutanam tatakutanam tajam tattajam tattajam taddin ginnatum taddin ginnatum. So the Karve, the interval is 5, takita. But I think I felt while doing the Adava, which is actually is not supposed to carry any or exhibit any specific bhavam, but I have always felt that these jatis actually carry a bhavam on its own, and sometimes you just need to enhance it through your atomies or through your approach while choreographing the adavus itself. So here the Takatakita, I found it very bold. It's like a bold statement by itself, even though it's silent. So it's very relative. It sometimes depends on how you look at all these intervals or how you space these intervals. Sometimes it could be very silent as a preface. Sometimes it could be very silent after while a jati is pronounced. So it all depends on how you space it. Like in a photograph, the photograph or the backdrop of a photograph could be a context. It's by itself, but how you space the object in respect with the backdrop speaks a lot. It carries an emotion. So similarly, how the karve is placed and what exactly is the interval has much to or is much eloquent, sometimes even being silent. So I have a small clip for this, and it's not a choreographed thing. It came as impromptu, but when I spoke of the space itself could be the context, or the natural sounds could be layam, and it speaks of something else which is perhaps not even intended. Similarly, representations of culture could be experienced in the way a tala is reckoned. Marma tala in Kerala Tala Pathadi is one such example. You may even convert it, or you may even combine it with a chapa talam, a mishra chapa, but the mode of reckoning speaks a lot, or sometimes it's very reflective of the culture it internalizes. So I have experimented this Marmatalam in my Bhagavati Chandra. It was a very experimental production, and Marmatalam with the Cholla, which was actually more popularized by late Kavalam Narayana Panikar sir. So it goes like this: tam, tat tam, tat tat tam, tat 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 tam, dhim, tat tim, tat tat tim, tat 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 tim, tom, tat tom, tat tat tom, tat 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 tom. So here I have used his cholus also, like tayyumatat tayyumatat tat tayyumatat tat tat tam, tayyumatat tayyumatat tat tayyumatat tat tat tam. And in the Bhagavati Chandra, the Bhagavati is presented as if in a ceremonial celebration. So it's like as in a temple procession. So this Marmatalam was used to denote, or to rather to represent, Tamil and Malayalam cultural convergence And adavus were choreographed as in a typical Malari, and the movements and positions spoke the ethos of a Dravidian temple procession itself, while the talam along with cholus resounded the Mela Pattadi of Kerala's musical tradition. So my Bhagavati was, I have positioned her in the border of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So I had to bring out the emotion of the ethos of a culture. So I have used talam as a symbolic representation of a convergence or a togetherness or a combination. Another instance of rhythm becoming culture personified was when I did Ravana in Lanka Lakshmi. Lanka Lakshmi is a very popular work, a play of noted writer, late C.N. Srivandan Nair. I had choreographed this Lanka Lakshmi in Bharatanatyam a decade ago. So when I did Ravana, I portrayed Ravana as a normal human being, not from the perspective of the Ramayana, from the perspective of Ravana, his mind and his emotional personality. And his inner conflicts were more emphasized rather than Ravana from the perspective of Rama or Ramayana or even Sita. So some of those critics commented on the Keraliya Prakritam of the character. That's the Keralite nature of Ravana. I actually wondered if I really did something specific to bring out that particular nature to the character. But then I found out that maybe it was because of the way I envisaged the character while reading the dialogues or monologues of Ravana. Actually, while reading the play itself, written by C.N. Though in some corners the words were formal Malayalam, I internalized while reading. I internalized certain words in a colloquial way. So, just this gesture, bring him. So in Malayalam, especially in middle Kerala, in the middle regions of Kerala, ingad vaado, ingad kondu vaado. So that kind of colloquial expression was there in my mind when I attempted this gesture. So some critics were saying that the Ravana had the gesture of a Malayali. Actually, it was not intended, but the dialogues were internalized by myself in such a way that there was a kind of colloquial attitude in the conversation. While I have a tendency to converse myself while doing Sancharis or Atmalaya, so it is like talking through your body. So when I talk, if I am bringing out a colloquial way of a language, then the colloquial representation becomes more visible through my gestures. I think it was actually an eye-opener when somebody came to me and hinted me this, because it was unintentional as far as I know. But again, it's a pointer to the fact that the way you conceive a word is somewhat complementary to how you portray it through your body. When the word becomes gesture, if the word is colloquial, then that colloquial nature becomes visible through your body, or it manifests itself through you. And thus my Ravana was too southern
Thank you, Dr. Rajeshri. She was not able to be present, but she said that she would be taking up any questions as and when she can join us. So next, we are moving to Mr. Satvik Venkatesh, who would be exploring the dynamics of music and artificial intelligence. Satvik holds a Bachelor of Technology in Information and Communication Technology from Shastra, India, and a Research Masters in Computer Music from ICCMR, University of Plymouth, UK. He currently is studying for a PhD in ICCMR on the topic of audio segmentation and intelligent mixing for live radio broadcast. His research interests include brain-computer music interfaces, unconventional computing, and artificial intelligence for music. Satvik, having received international classical and percussion training from senior gurus in India, is also a promising musician and performer. Over to you, Mr. Satvik. Satvik, could you please unmute yourself?
Oh, hello. Yes, just 1 second. I'm just. Namaste to one and all present here. Thank you very much, Aatmalaya Academy and Trikalaa Gurukulam for having me here and organizing this wonderful event. Today I'll be speaking about music and artificial intelligence, on how AI can be applied to music in different ways. So AI and music is a hot topic of research, and there are many individuals who are looking at this. What do you say? This topic at the moment, and it's really interesting because it enables collaboration between artists and computer scientists, and they can render new innovations on contributing to each other's domain. And that's the main objective of today's presentation, on how an artist can actually use these AI tools in their practice. So here's a quick overview of the presentation. First, I'll be talking about what is AI and how it has been changing over the years. So initially, the way we looked at intelligent machines is different from how we look at them right now. So initially, it was just to mimic human intelligence, but now machines are getting much more powerful, and we're able to accomplish tasks that we weren't able to achieve as humans ourselves. Next, I'll be talking about algorithmic composition, and this is a very interesting topic because we're actually using an algorithm. An algorithm can be anything. It can be something like rolling a dice or flipping a coin, or even more sophisticated processes. And so I'll be discussing about how we can use algorithms to compose music. And then I'll be talking about sound processing, on how artificial intelligence models can be used to process sound. And there are many creative ways where this can be explored. For example, there are cases where you would make a human speaking sound like a cat. I'll show you audio demonstrations of this, and I'm sure you'll get a better idea of what I'm trying to say. And after, I'll be talking about information retrieval. So information retrieval is basically extracting information from sound. And this can be anything. This can range from raga recognition talam tracking, or it could be, so it's basically extracting information. Even speech recognition algorithms are under information retrieval, because you have someone speaking and you're extracting text from what the person's speaking. So what is AI? So as I said earlier, the definition has changed significantly over the years, and also our use cases have also changed. I mean, what we use AI algorithms for has also changed significantly over the years. So it can be defined as a simulation of human intelligence in machines. So that is one way of defining it. And this can range from many factors such as thought processes or the reasoning capabilities of the human mind, or also talking about behavioristic characteristics. So yeah, how to imitate human behavior, or how to replicate the thought process or the reasoning in the human mind. So the initial AI systems were basically expert systems, and the reason why they're called so is because you would have a knowledge engineer, as you can see in the middle, who would be working closely with an expert who is a pianist in this case. So we would have an expert in the field who is transferring his knowledge to a knowledge engineer. So you would suppose you want to have a machine play the piano like a professional pianist. Now, how do you do this? So basically, you're having a pianist transferring his knowledge to the knowledge engineer. For example, saying what different scales are there. Also talking about how hard you should hit the piano key, or which time signatures you need to choose. So these are all important factors that are transformed into a set of rules. And the disadvantage of this is that we need to our knowledge base would be biased to one specific expert. So this would be like localized to just one expert or a group of experts, and it would have less of a global outreach. And there are also limitations on how much knowledge you can extract, because even the knowledge engineer would have some level of human capabilities. So now the state-of-the-art technique is machine learning in AI, where which is a pretty well-known field right now. There's a lot of buzz around this field. I'm sure you would have read a lot about how data science is exploding, how data has power in the recent times. And so the basic concept of machine learning is that we change the programming paradigm itself. So initially it was, we would hard code the machine and say, you do this, you do that. And then the machine understands what to do. But now we don't explicitly tell what the machine should do. Instead of that, we have data and we have labels. So we have a lot of data. For example, you want to make the machine play like a professional pianist. You would have many piano examples, and you would have corresponding labels for those examples. So it's basically, you have a lot of data and you have corresponding labels which represent the data. So the machine can learn by itself through a machine learning algorithm, and it would infer rules which can be referred to for playing or performance of the musical instrument. So let's talk about algorithmic composition. Now, as I said earlier, algorithmic composition is basically using algorithms or any sort of computational process to make music. And let's talk about a very simple algorithm. Now, I want to roll a die and make music out of it. And in this case, let's take the 6 different numbers of the die to correspond to 6 different notes on the Mohanam scale. So the Mohanam Ragam is pretty familiar amongst all of us. It's a pretty popular scale where you have 5 different notes, and the 6th note is the upper octave Sa. So you have Sa Re Ga Pa Da Sa corresponding to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, how do we simulate the rhythm? Now, let's have another random process that's flipping a coin. And let's say the heads of the coin corresponds to a quarter note, and the tails corresponds to an eighth note. So a quarter note would basically be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the eighth note will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have two different rhythmic possibilities that we can choose from. So I flipped the coin 6 times and I rolled the die 6 times. And this is the outcome that I got. That's 1, 5, 4, 5, 1, 2. And the corresponding output for flipping the coin was tails, heads, heads, tails, tails, tails. Now, this is, so if we map it to the mapping that we had designed earlier, what we get is Sada, Pa, Da, Sari. And the corresponding rhythmic intervals is the eighth note, then you have a quarter note, eighth note, eighth note, eighth note. Now, if we play this on the piano, this is what we get. I just want to make sure that I'm sharing my computer. Okay. So this is what we get when I play the piano sound. So considering that we were just rolling a die and flipping a coin, I think this is pretty impressive for a melody that was composed by a purely random process. And if we beautify the tune and jazz it up with a little drums and strings and other instrumentation, this is what we get. So yeah, so this is basically composed by a purely random process that's rolling a die and flipping a coin. And I basically used none of my compositional abilities to make this. It was a purely random process. So if you would have noticed in the earlier experiment that I presented, I had a set of rules that I had followed. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the numbers on a die. And I had mapped this to the Mohanam scale. Now, suppose these notes were random. Suppose I had mapped this to like 6 different ragas in different scales or different root notes, and I would have ended up composing something random, and that would not have sounded very pleasant to the ear. So this is a useful model that basically delineates the composition process into 2 big steps. That is inspiration and innovation. So inspiration is the existing literature in this world that we are listening to on a daily basis, and which has a very rich history. This can include the different scales. This can include different, like all the composition ideas, like in different kirtanams and different Bollywood music. And it's a lot of ideas. And you would see very often that one song that's released in 2006 would sound very similar to the same song that's released in 2006, maybe 6 months later. Why? Because one music is getting inspired by the previous music. And this is something very important. We can't really get rid of inspiration. And that's the foundation for most of our compositional process. And the next is innovation. Now, in the previous experiment of rolling a die, the innovation came from a purely random process. A purely random process over here was rolling a die and flipping a coin. So this purely random process was very simple. Now, generally, in recent times, where researchers have been exploring algorithmic composition, they have been developing more sophisticated models, such as they've used Markov chains, genetic algorithms, neural networks. So these are all different state-of-the-art algorithms that have been used through machine learning. And so the innovation process becomes more sophisticated. It's not as simple as just rolling a die. And talking about innovation, I've had the opportunity to work in my lab with biocomputing for musical composition. So as you can see in the figure, it's a plasmodial slime mold. So it's basically, it's a slime mold that can be found in the forest. And it's called Physarum polycephalum. And a few scientists have actually found that this organism has intelligent properties. So suppose you have the organism on a surface and you sprinkle oat flakes around the surface. And what happens is the organism actually finds the most optimal path, the shortest path between two oat flakes, two food sources. And that was actually remarkable. So this idea was actually used to design a railway network. So if you design a railway network and you place the railway stations at different points, the organism would find the most efficient path. And that's actually pretty amazing, considering that it is just a plasmodial slime mold and there is no hidden artificial computation behind it. It's pretty impressive. And what we did was we used this organism as an electrical component, and we connected it to an electronic circuit. So this organism, among its intelligent properties, also has the ability to act as a memristor. So it basically has its own inherent memory. So suppose you apply a series of voltages across it, it remembers to some extent what the history has been. So we used this ability of the memristor to compose new music. So this is the overview of the system, where so basically what I did was I had a collaboration with a slime mold. So basically I made music and I fed it to the slime mold, and the slime mold bounced back with its own ideas on how the music should be. So I basically composed a rock song. And so here's an overview of the system. First, there would be input music, what I would compose. And then this music would be translated to a series of voltages. And these voltages would be applied across the organism. And based on the organism's response, we would sense the current that's flowing through the organism. And so based on what the current, based on the current flowing through the circuit, we would translate that back to music. So the organism would actually be composing new music based on existing music that I made. So so Creep Into My Lawn is the name of the rock song that I composed. And so here is a small section of the piano solo that I had originally composed. This is the original solo that I had made. Now, I wanted Faisaram to mutate this solo and give its own feeling to it and its own flavor to it. And this is what I got. Raw output from the organism. And to be honest, I actually personally like Faisaram's output better than what I'd made. And that was a cool part. Like I could actually improve my own composition with the help of an organism and make it a collaborator in my composition process. So here are a few links to the song. It would be cool if you guys could check it out. This is the YouTube link to the song. And this research was published in the NIME conference, the New Instruments for Musical Expression. And so the paper is titled Composing Popular Music with Faisaram Polycephalum Based Memristors. And the supervisors for my project were Dr. Edward Braun and Professor Eduardo Miranda. And so Dr. Edward Braun, his PhD thesis is on developing Faisaram polycephalum for music. So if you guys would want to learn more about this field, I would encourage you to check out his PhD thesis. So let's get to sound processing. That's the next subtopic in this presentation. So I'll be talking about timbre transfer. So timbre is basically the sound quality. Like, for example, my voice has a specific timbre, then a violin would have another timbre. A bird would have its own sound quality. So the quality of sound can be defined as timbre. And so this DDSP library, it stands for Differential Digital Signal Processing, was developed by the Google Magenta team. And so they were in one of the research projects, they explored this concept of timbre transfer, where you would transfer the timbre of, for example, a mridangam to something like a drum kit, or a violin to an electric guitar. Or I mean, just saying, I mean, these weren't actually implemented, but I'm just giving an example of how a timbre can be, how the timbre can be transferred. So this is a hackathon that I attended earlier this year, I think sometime in September. So the topic that we were assigned to was, what is the new AI aesthetic? So in 1960s, electric guitar gave rise to rock music, and in the early 2000s, what do you say, laptops at home gave rise to electronic music. And what is the new AI aesthetic? What is the new music? What's the new style of music that AI can actually create? So that was the topic, and we wanted to explore the use of environmental sounds in music. For example, how we can actually make birds sing, like that. How to make unconventional instruments or sounds that actually a part of conventional music or traditional music. So my teammates were Antonio, Laura, and singing. A great team, and we got to do a lot. We got the chance to explore a lot of interesting things. And so this is a so this is a small section that we came up with from the hackathon, and I'll just play an example.
Somewhere over the rainbow.
I agree that it's not at music production quality level yet. But what we did was so I sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That's the first line of a song. And we trained the machine learning model with sounds of seagulls. So we downloaded various seagull sounds, and we trained the model with that. And what we did was we made the seagull sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and it did, to an extent, actually sing. It did sound like a bird singing that specific tune. So so basically DDSP, the library that was developed by Google, was designed for only melodic instruments like the violin or the flute or saxophone. But we explored it for bird sounds. And so what the DDSP library did was actually extract the harmonic elements from the bird's sound and actually turn it into something musical. So I also wanted to explore how timbre transfer can be done with Carnatic music. So the original audio that I'm going to play was sung by Srimati Siddhi Krishnamurthy. So what I observed was for the DDSP library to capture Carnatic music was far more challenging. Like the simple pop songs are a lot easier, where you have like discrete notes, and there's not much of gamakas, there's not much of microtones involved. So it automatically gets a lot easier for the algorithm to understand. So here is a very experimental stage demo, what I'm going to show you. So this is her original voice. So this is her original voice, and what I'm going to play is a timbre transfer from a violin to her voice. So you're transferring the timbre, the sound quality of a violin, onto her voice. I just wanted to, it's important to note that synthesizing a violin sound is very, very challenging. So we are at the stage where the music industry can synthesize drum sounds or piano sounds very easily. But instruments like violin are quite difficult because firstly, it's fretless. There are no frets in the violin. and it's as good as an instrument singing. So it's very challenging. So I would just play the violin's version of her voice. So this is the violin, and I'll play the flute as well. So as you can see, it does transfer the timbre to a good extent, but it is still far from production quality. Like it still needs to be optimized. For example, for the breath sounds, so the breaths in her vocals were not perceived by the violin or the flute correctly. So there's a lot of scope for research, which will be explored in the future. And this is something that I'm actually planning to look into pretty seriously of how Carnatic music can be optimally transferred into, like adopted for timbre transfer. Sorry. So next I'll be talking about music information retrieval. So as I said earlier, information retrieval is the process of extracting information from sound. A few examples include raga recognition, beat tracking, and automatic music transcription. An example of automatic music transcription is where you would transcribe a song. For example, a person is singing a song, and you want the notation of the song to be transcribed in real time. So generally for this, you need to go to an expert in the field who would actually transcribe the song for you and say, this is the notes are sari, ga, ri, or whatever, like whatever the notation is. And if a computer is automatically able to transcribe music, it's pretty cool. So information retrieval, or MIR, has a lot of useful impact, possibilities of impact. So Radio Me is a project that's basically, my PhD project is a part of Radio Me, and it's a UK government funded project that deals with developing an intelligent radio for people who are suffering from dementia. So the thing is, people who are suffering from dementia have a lot of symptoms such as memory loss, and another important symptom that they face is agitation. So our project it's a highly collaborative project, including 4 different universities, and my PhD project is on the MIR aspect of Radio Me. And the main objective of the project is to ease the symptoms of agitation. Suppose a person is undergoing an agitation episode. Now, music is known to have relaxing effect on the listener. So we can use the relaxing effect or the calming effect on the listener. So suppose a person is going through an agitation episode, we would detect it using sensors and have calming music that's being played. And another use case of this project would be to have diary reminders. For example, at 12 o'clock, you need to have lunch. So the radio would be running, and the radio would be interrupted with another DJ-like voice, say, hey, it's time for your lunch, or at 3 o'clock, why don't you take your dog for a walk? So things like that. There are ways that we would be interrupting the radio in real time. So audio segmentation is what I'll be dealing with in my PhD project. So if you want to remix the radio automatically, it is important to understand what is being played in the radio, right? So there are basically 2 important things that's being played in the radio, right? That's either music or speech. Now, how do we detect whether there's music being played or whether speech is being played? So this is what I'm researching. So I'm researching whether music is being detected at that time or whether speech is being detected, and I'm using machine learning to perform this task. And based on what is being detected, we will be remixing the music intelligently so that the transition is smooth. Yeah. And thank you very much for listening, and hope this was useful. And yeah, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sathwik, for effectively combining music and artificial intelligence and letting us know the prospects that are going to that can be explored by people like you. Thank you so much for your presentation. Next, we have Saralaya sisters, Kavita and Triveni, who would be talking about Varnams. Saralaya sisters, Kavita and Triveni, were initiated into Carnatic music early by their mother, Srimati Sulochana Saralaya, a Bharatanatyam dancer and art critic of repute, with great support from their father, Sri P.M. Saralaya. The musical journey started with training from gurus Dindigal, S.B. Natarajan, and Vidushi S. Vijayalakshmi, Sangeeta Kalacharya, Srimati Sita Lakshmi Venkateshan, a flag bearer of the Semangudi school for several years. They have had the support and constant guidance of H.K. Venkatram, Triveni's husband, who is an accomplished violinist himself. They were awarded the National Scholarship from Department of Culture, Government of India. Saralaya sisters are empaneled in the National List of Artists of ICCR, Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, as well as A-grade artists of Prasar Bharati. Over to you, Saralaya sisters. You're still muted, ma'am.
Good afternoon, esteemed scholars, artists, ladies and gentlemen. Today we will present a lecture demonstration on Varnas, their versatility and relevance in Carnatic music. Varnas are exemplary compositions akin to Carnatic music only. There are numerous Varnas composed by great scholars from centuries, as well as Varnas composed by contemporary composers in various ragas. They play a unique role in the abhyasa of classical Carnatic music and a pivotal role in the Bharatanatyam margam as well. Varnas usually comprise of a pallavi, charana, which comprises of a line of sahitya followed by chittaswaras, and in many concerts the varna is presented as the first item as it aids in the warming up because of its structure. Today, we will make a humble attempt to bring out some of the main facets of these gems. They lay a firm foundation for the learner with respect to raga swarupa, tala and laya control, and manodharma sangeeta in the Nerval and Swara Prastara passages. In the Bharatanatyam repertoire, it usually forms the main piece with scope for both abhinaya in the sahitya and the intricate patterns in the nritta and laya passages as well. Today, we focus on the relevance of varnas in Carnatic music per se. Varnas are broadly classified into Tana Varnas, Pada Varnas, and Daru Varnas. Tana Varnas have sahitya only in the Pallavi and Anupallavi, and only chittaswaras in the charana. Pada Varnas have sahitya incorporated in the Anupallavi as well, and the chittaswaras as well of the charana. Dharu Varnas have in addition jatis put into place in the Anupallavi section. Pada Varnas and Daru Varnas are common to both Carnatic concerts and Bharatanatyam recitals. We now sing the Anupallavi with the jatis in the popular Daru Varna in Kamach by Sri Muttaya Bhagavatam. Dadani, 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 pamadada, ni re sa ni sa da ni sa da pa ma ma da da. Tam tam ta janu dadani dadi ni da da tam tam, ugu dari da janu da da pa ma ma da da. Ni da ni sa ni ni dari ki da jam jam da ki da da ugu dari ram dari tam tam. Kaga sakala kalani puna chatura dada, vivida mata samaya samara sajada, sura padalaya madhura vachana dada, sarasa ruchira dada swara yadita.
Now, taking varnas as the compositions of great value, the following aspects have been delved into. Taking the first aspect of raga structure, we have taken examples of Tana varnas in this section, and we start with the Tala Varna, Sarasiganaba in Kambodi by Vaduvelu. The picture of Kambodi is clearly evident in the first line itself. It also helps to gain knowledge of Sahitya Bhava in other compositions in the same raga and never sing it. Now we cite the example of the Bhairavi Atatala Varna, Guriboni, by Sri Adi Appaiah. The beautiful picture of Bhairavi is painted in the first line itself, which could be the magnum opus to the rest of the Sangatis of Bhairavi Raga that will help in understanding the Raga Swarupa. It is very essential for one to be able to identify the raga in the very first phrase of an alapana or a composition. The Varnas bring out this aspect very clearly in the first line of the Pallavi itself, and there is no which raga it could be. For example, Sahana. Coming to the second aspect, that is practice in terms of raga and laya. If one practices a varna and akara in two kalas, vidamba and madhyama, it will give a kaleidoscope of ideas for raga delineation. The practices in different kalas will heighten the grip over laya and the splitting of the sahitya, according to the underlying swara, will give the learner an insight into the gamaka prayoga in the raga as well. Apart from existing Samritis in the Varna Sahitya, there is ample scope for one to present the same with embellishments according to one's own Manodharma and Sahitya Bhava, curated through the regular practice of Varnas. For example, hence, it is a great tool in voice culture and modulation that goes a long way in the aesthetics and phonetics of Carnatic music. If we take the Saveri Aditala Varna Sarasuda by Kotavas and Venkataramana Iyer, the opening line itself is the gateway to Saveri. In the second line, Chala, the Gamaka Prayoga of Saveri is clearly evident.
Sorry, can I interrupt? Triveni, could you reduce the Shruti volume? Because some people have said it will be easier to hear you all louder. Thank you.
Is this okay now?
A lot better. Yeah, just keep it to minimum.
Okay.
This second line surely resonates the essence of Saveri in touching the pivotal point. The beautiful usage of this Jaru Gavaka speaks volumes of Saveri in this Varna. Now coming on to the Abhyasa in terms of Swara patterns and the rhythmic patterns interwoven into them. Taking the Adithala Varna and Sahana by Tiruvattur Tyagaraja, Karunimpa, there is the usage of Janti and Dhatu Vases in combination. Practicing of these Swara combinations in various kalas will give a firm grip over Swarasthanas, Laya and Swaraprasthara as well. In many Varnas, the third Chittaswara in the Chalana section of the Varna usually comprise of a Swara pattern without any Dirgha Swaras. For example, the third Chittaswara in Sahana, Hamsadvani and Darbar Varnas all depict this. Constant practice and perfection of this in the Vilamba Kala and Madhyama Kala will help immensely in breath control for vocalists and laya control for instrumentalists. Hamsadvani. Sahana. Darbar, sorry. gani sani niri sani sada pada mama re ma pa nu. There are many contemporary composers who have composed varnas. To name a few, Sri Lalgudi G. Jayaraman, Dr. T.R. Subramaniam, and Dr. M. Balamurali Krishna. Since we've had the great privilege of learning many varnas and compositions directly from Dr. Balamurali Krishna, we would like to present a few of his varnas that are a great example of the versatility of creative excellence that the compositional structure of the varnas provided in terms of raga, laya, and aesthetics. The first one is a Tala Varna in Chalanata. Here the composer has paid obeisance to the 7 notes of the musical scale Saptaswara. It begins with the sahitya of the 7 notes being an integral part of life, and then moves on to the Chittaswaras, 7 in number, each one starting from Shraddha to Nishada. The Charna Sahitya starts from the Atita in the cycle of 8 beats, and the Chittaswaras all start on the first beat itself. This unique structure can help one to create swaras or do Retrieval at any point on the Tala cycle. Sapta swara mulona, Jevamu sapta swara mulona, Jevamu sa Vegama Pamapa Dani sapta swara mulona, Jevamu Virivamarisa Papa Sani Pama, Viri Sani Sapta Swara Mulona, Jevamu, Gama Mama Sani, Kamari Sani Papa Sani Sapta Swara Mulona, Jevamu. Mama papa papa da da di di sa sa ni ba ma ga ma ba di sa la swara mulona jevamu papa ma di ni ba ma sa ni ba re ni sa ni ma di sa ni ma ba di sa la swara mulona jevamu da ni sa ni ba ma pa ni pa ma ma re re ga ma ni sa ga ma ba ni sa Swara mulona, Jevamu, Sari Babari Sari Gababadani, Sari Babari Sari Gababadani, Sari Babari Sari Gamapadani, Sapta Swara mulona, Jevamu, Sapta Swara mulona. We take the example of the Shanmukha Priya Padavarna in Aditala by Dr. Balamurali Krishna. Here, the genius composer has described the origin and existence of the primordial sound Om, and then goes on to complex swara patterns in the Charana aesthetically and intelligently, that one finds it pleasing to the ear even though it is complex in nature. With a little innovation, the same Chittaswara can be expressed differently with the same Akshara Kalas. Sari gama pama gari sa, te gama pada pama gari, gama pada ni da pama sari gama pama gari sa, te gama pada pama gari, gama pada ni da pama sari gama pama gari sa, te gama pada pama gari, gama pada ni da pama pama budi pama budi. Namulu dasha disha lupu, megadana pama namu prabha budi pama budi. Namulu dasha disha lupu. In this varna, the composer has amalgamated the swaras with the sahitya to form the meaningful swaraksharas. which forms the Etukade Sahitya. In the last 3 lines of this Chiteswara, that is the last Chiteswara in the Shanmukha Priya Varna, the last 3 lines add up to 39 aksharas. The pattern is so wonderfully split into 12 aksharas in the first line, 13 in the second, and 14 in the third, rather than the mundane splitting of 13 plus 13 plus 13, adding up to 39. This again reaches the climax of the Swarakshara in the Etukade Sahitya, Padani Gajamuna. Padani Rajamune Namvite Ni Dadani Dani Mama Pama Pama Papa Pada Gagari Zani Dabari Zani Dabama Sami Dabada Rizani Dabada Sani Zapada Barizani Pada Bagari Mama Gari Zani Sade Gari Zani Dani Sade Garizani da badani rajamune namiti nina yeludaram yamulumadaga suguna michi sarana boirada vitarana muni jamulupal udaru sada teriyaga bharata bhuvini jalulu kalisi melisi sunamura varalude madye yamuga satkarma Charanamu Bhatyana Namara Vidupadani Rajamune Namuriti Padani Rajamune Namiti. These kind of combinations, what we saw in the last 3 lines, can set one into thinking as to how one can conceptualize Gurukams. We now come to the last example. It's a Tala Varna by Dr. Balamuni Krishna in the Adi Tala in Amritavashini. Here we see the clever usage of Dhatu Swaras and Swara patterns and Akshara Kalas. One can practice all the Chittaswaras as a whole without a break gain control over Swarastanas, Swara patterns, combinations, and rhythmic patterns in Swara Prastara as well. Gama bani sa sa ni ba ma ga ma ba pa ma ga sa ni sa ma ba ni sa ma ba ni sa ma ba ni ba sa ni sa pa ma pa sa ga ma pa sa ni ma ba ga ni sa pa sa ni ma ba ga ma sa ga ma ba ni ba sa ni sa ga sa ni ba ni ba pa ma ba ga ma pa sa ga ma ba ni sa ga sa ni ba ma ga sa ni ba pa pa sa pa pa ni ma ba ga ma sa ga ni ma ma ga ga ni Mama ga mama ga mama ni mama sa ni mama ga sa ni mama ga sa ga mama ni sa ga mama ni sa ga mama ga ga wa chi wa ni na ga wa chi wa ni. Here the 4 Chittaswaras were sung as a unit. Kavita and I thank the organizers, Dr. Padmaja Suresh and Dr. Deepti Banda, for making us a part of CHIDAAKAASHAM. We thank you for giving us this opportunity to put forth our thoughts and perspective on the versatility and relevance of Varnams in Carnatic music. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an informative and engaging lecture demonstration on the various aspects of Varnams. Thank you so much. Although we have exceeded the time limit, we would like to take up a few questions that are already typed in the chat box. The first question is to Dr. Chudamani Nandagopal, asked by Nandakumar sir. The question is, as in Sangeeta, the Tala, Anga and Upangas are given names and in some cases, Paribhasha's names too. Are there similar things in Shilpa too for the Tala Matra as you have described? Chudamani ma'am?
Until ma'am comes, you can take up the next question to the next speaker if at all there is. Yeah.
Sure, ma'am. We have the next question. Okay, I think the next question was to Mrs. Sathwik, and I guess he's already answered it in the chat box. But if you want, we can take it up. Dr. Rajashri is not with there. We will forward your question to Rajashri.
I have also typed the email addresses of both Trikalam and Aatmalaya. So whoever is not available, the speakers, we can immediately send the questions on email to them and get back as soon as possible.
Mrs. Sathwik, would you want to explain it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, that is a very good question about how speech synthesis. So initially, how it was, how speech synthesis, I mean, it's basically text-to-speech synthesis. Initially, how it was done is we were having a lot of sound samples, and these sound samples were actually stitched together to make text getting translated to speech. And so in recent years, speech synthesis by the computer directly has able to achieve much better performance. What researchers are actually trying to do is make speech more expressive. So right now it's very, if you would see the speech synthesis in Google Maps and a lot of these applications, you would see that it's clear, but unfortunately it's not expressive enough. So that's something that people are trying to achieve, like add emotion to speech and make it suitable for stuff like cinematic narration and things like that. And also voice cloning is another interesting area of research that's been ongoing recently with regards to cloning another person's voice. I mean, it has a lot of ethical considerations as well, but if used properly, it can be helpful for making the speech more expressive. And yeah, that's, I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sathwik. Dr. Nandakumar, would you like to say something? So please unmute yourself.
Can I ask a question to Karthik over the air, as it were? Karthik, long ago in Tata Institute, we were doing something using the Paniniya Sutra, that is, and dreaming that in the future, I suppose the future is now, that the accent would also be addressed. For example, in the same language, English, the Europeans speak the English differently than the Britishers, and the British speak differently than Americans, and we Indians here speaking the English. Anyway, do we have the AI covering up this, the English, the same language, the accent modification with machine learning?
Yes, it is coming. I mean, so what I've observed is there's a lot of this music and artificial intelligence research is conducted in the West. And in India, people are actually, now it's slowly developing to a good extent. And the machine learning community in India is growing significantly. And in the future, I'm sure, so the thing is, languages like Sanskrit are a lot more challenging, like, because like, suppose you have like ta tha da da na, you have 4 different accents, and all of them are from the same source. And again, ka ka ga ga nga, you have it from the same sound source. So again, if you talk about English phonetics, it's not as sophisticated as Sanskrit, and Sanskrit is a lot more mathematical, and there's a lot more to go. So I would say in the future it's definitely possible, but the main way to address that is to have more people speak Sanskrit, where you would have more spoken examples, so that the computer can learn from people actually speaking. So right now, if you go to Google Translate, you would have translations for Kannada, you would have translations for Tamil, Malayalam. There's a lot available, but you don't have anything for Sanskrit. Why? Because there are less spoken examples. And it's something that even I would really like to look into. And since you've told me about it, I would really like to actually, what do you say, give this more attention because it seems very interesting. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sathwik and Dr. Nandakumar. With this, we come to an end of the day one of CHIDAAKAASHAM, where we saw Dr. Sonal Mansingh, Dr. Chamani Nandagopal, Dr. David Clement, Dr. John Mcdonough, Dr. R.S. Nandakumar, Dr. Rajashri Warrior, Mr. Sathwik Venkatesh, and Saralaya sisters, who brought to us the multiple interpretations of music and dance. We're thankful to each one of you for being with us today. Sincere thanks to all attendees who joined us today and remained till the end, although we exceeded the time a little bit further. Please join us tomorrow at the same time for day 2 of CHIDAAKAASHAM, where we have an eminent panel of scholars and artists who would be taking forward and expanding the various discourses related to music and dance. See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Malavika. Thank you, Rahana. And we wish the same audience and much more people tomorrow. Namaskaram.
Surely, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Namaskar.
Yeah.